Face the south. I'm pointing. I'm making. See the barn in the distance?
Yep.
I drove around. It's 1 mile away. I can't hear it's the barn. Green gun's the barn. Take a look to your left. What do you see to the left?
Barn.
A what? A great big what? Great big field where? Great big hole. High ground is?
Good.
Those are
Bad.
day 1 afternoon. Hills full Confederate gray. That hole's full of Union blue. Oh, Kinley, come here. Kinley, Grandpa is on that line going that way. Look here.
Minnesota, I have a strong connection to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. My 4th grade grandfather, Jonathan S. Ford, and his older brother, William, both fought together here at Gettysburg. Jonathan was only 22 and his brother was 25. He had 2 older brothers, Samuel, who was 23, and Francis, who was only 19, who were both in the Union Army. By the time my 4th grade grandfather, Jonathan Ford, arrived at Gettysburg, he had already fought in 6 major Civil War battles in Virginia and Maryland. He was wounded by gunshot at the Battle of South Mountain in Maryland. On July 1st of 1863, Jonathan Ford lined up with the men of the 107th Pennsylvania Infantry to fight the Southern rebels. It was on that very first day of battle that he was captured. The Battle of Gettysburg continued for 2 more days, but my 4th grade grandfather would spend the rest of the Civil War as a prisoner of war, eventually being sent to Andersonville Prison in Georgia. It was here at Andersonville Prison that he was reunited with his younger brother Francis, who had also been captured by the Confederate Army. Conditions were so horrible at Andersonville that over 13,000 men died while in prison there. Unfortunately, Jonathan's brother Francis was one of them. Jonathan survived the war and imprisonment and was released after the South surrendered. He returned home to Pennsylvania, where he lived until he died in 1908 at the age of 64. His name, along his brother William Ford, appear on the plaque on the large Pennsylvania monument.
Did you hear that? He's in prison in Georgia for almost 2 years. In what's known as a hellhole, quite frankly. Anderson Prison was not a place to be. Not enough food, not enough shelter. It's a terrible place to be. But he made it. Congratulations. You know, because he made it, you're here?
Mm-hmm.
How many soldiers from the Confederacy? 1,500. 5 times the size. General Hancock is here. He's running out of men. He'll have the 1st Minnesota run down and try and chop the group. He'll say, Colonel, take those colors. Now, Colonel Colville will realize that's pretty much a lost cause. But he also realizes this is the only unit here. Their job is to get down and buy time. Slow down the attack of the Confederates. If they can make them stop the charge, there'll be more time for Union forces to come. As it turns out, when these guys start shooting, the men in gray stop. They come almost a mile, been shot at. Don't know how many men are in front of them. You break the charge. Now finally, when they realize it's a very small group in front of them, they'll start charging again. But when they do that, Minnesota gets a chance to come out, but only 42 of them. 82% rate of casualty. 4 out of 5 people don't get out. Let's say only 20% get out. That means from you over, you live, the rest of you are gone. That's a huge loss right here. In one short charge, Minnesota bought time for the Union Army to be saved. Minnesota did the job well. They did a job well.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in the great Civil War, testing whether our nation, or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on the great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this.
But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate
we cannot hollow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it for far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last measure of devotion. That we are highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.